This is 2OF Entertainment.
Well, good morning, Paul. Good afternoon, wherever we are.
Yeah, well, we're a little bit of time zones. We're had a time change here in North America, so we're good with that. And I think we got everybody straightened away, and we're on a little bit of a melt happening, so that's kind of nice. We're just maybe start seeing some warmer weather and get people and artists out painting a little bit more than they were before, even though they do paint in the wintertime quite a bit. But a lot of them are like me. I like it melting, be a little bit above zero before I go out and paint myself. So it's kind of
so you got a little bit more time now. You don't have to dig your car out. Is that what you're trying to say?
The car's been dug out. Actually, the car's in the garage, but you still have to dig the driveway out to get the car out of the garage. So no, we're good. We're on a melt, and you're actually seeing some asphalt, and everything's good. Anyway, back to our show today. Wow, we've got it amazes me how many different ways a landscape can be interpreted. Like it just amazes me. And I'm a landscape painter, and we have Tatianna O'Donnell with us today. And the way she works is very different than the way a lot of other artists work. Her work will really send a shiver down your back. It's not so much, it's so much a feeling in her work. It's not so much drawing every leaf and branch in a tree or her scapes, but you'll find it's quite evocative if you think about it. They're very richly colored, and her pieces are about a feeling of the landscape, really putting you in a sense of time with that landscape in a different way. You're not standing up looking at stuff a lot of times. You're kind of laying down looking at the sky, kind of a feeling. A lot of the work,
like we used to do when we were kids, just lying around.
Just like it. I mean, anyway, let's bring her in. And even though she's a very accomplished landscape painter, she's an instructor and teacher. She's a member of the Alberta Society of Artists as well. She's got.
I'll add her to the show then, and at the same time, I'll say goodbye to everyone and catch up with you guys at the end of the show. Have a great show, and see you all at the end. Yeah.
Well, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Yeah. So how's the weather there? Yeah. Starting to melt?
It's getting better. It's actually going to be really warm on the weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit too warm for this time of year, but the snow will be gone.
Yeah. I know it's we like it. I guess we like seeing it come, and we do like seeing it go. I'd love to see a bit of green grass now for a little while. I'd be willing to deal with that. But today we just deal with what we've got here. We've got I really appreciate you showing coming on the show today. I think I've seen your work off and on. You're a member of Artists in Canada, and appreciate that. And it kind of caught me. Not just by surprise a little bit, because I'm a landscape painter and I see landscape my way, and a lot of other artists see it in their interpretation of how they're responding to the landscape. And I think the way you're responding is really different in a very sensual way. Like it's more internal and inside you, the feeling of being in that space. I mean, we're talking about, I'm not showing anybody anything just yet. And then the first image will kind of set the mood a little bit, what we're doing here. But understanding that, how do you paint a land? How do you interpret your landscapes the way you're painting right now?
How do I interpret it?
Yeah. How do you interpret a landscape, like whatever it be, whether city or rural or whatever you're painting?
I guess I come to it from a perspective of time, in a way, because I'm painting the landscape, but I'm looking at a moment in time that is gone. Like trying to capture a moment. A lot of the time we're driving in a car or we're walking along and we see all the beautiful trees and mountains, sky, everything that goes into a landscape. And then we move on and we see a different landscape, or we're all so busy in life that we're gone and doing something else. So I'm capturing this moment that a lot of the time we don't even remember seeing it specifically that. And so I think of it as motion and stillness all in one.
Yeah. I think I'm going to get David to launch our image here. We'll get it started. There we go. So we're looking at what are we looking at here? A residential neighborhood? Is that too representational to say that, or what are we looking at?
This is probably a countryside neighborhood, not right in the city. It may be a residential neighborhood out in the country, where I took a picture while I was in a moving vehicle. And often I'll take pictures in a moving vehicle, and then I take all these pictures home and I take a look at them. And sometimes I crop them. Sometimes I take them into Photoshop and crop them or enhance them, do different things with them. Sometimes I make them move a little bit more. I can do that in Photoshop. And I take the parts that speak to me, I guess.
You're right. No, it's got focus to it. I mean, I just love, green is a really tough color for a lot of artists. This is just rich and sumptuous. Like, it just feels, and there's nice spark of light. There's good contrast happening, nice color palette, and it's a very pleasing painting. And I love that you've left room for me to think about what that picture's about. Yeah. I guess it's part of my travel experience is what I would expect that would be. I guess is you're transferring that to me a little bit. Is that not true? I guess what we're doing in your work?
Yes. So like in the painting, in a lot of my, I call it transition series. And a lot of the times in those paintings, you will see a reflection of the inside of the vehicle. So if you see on the left-hand side, what look like two little windows, and those are from reflection of a car. And up above it are parts of the car that are reflected. So so when I take the picture, I try to get some of those reflections of the vehicle in the photograph and then in the painting.
That gives a nice sense of being inside somewhere, yet not being inside somewhere. So, yeah, and I'm looking at that now and picking it through and saying, I can sort of see the window jamb of the car, and you could see maybe that's a reflection from a mirror that might be happening. No, there's a nice piece of abstraction that holds your whole work together. I mean, and I kind of always have believed that even in a realistic painting, you need the abstraction to break that space up to hold it all together, right? So, are these oil paintings or
these are oil paintings? Yes.
On canvas.
Canvas, yeah.
On canvas, yeah.
And they're all underpainted in a burnt umber color.
Okay, so they're done in a classical sense of way. Then you have your undercolor, then you build up from there into your color palette that you're working. So do you have a predetermined kind of color palette when you start? So you, in your mind, you say this one feels more greens to me and rich yellows and ochres, or is that just come to you?
I paint very intuitively, so I will put out the colors that I think I'm going to use, and then that changes sometimes as I'm going along. When I'm teaching painting, I often tell my students the painting speaks to you and tells you what it needs and what it wants. So if I have a predetermined idea of what I want the painting to look like, it isn't always going to be that. As a matter of fact, most of the time it's not, because as the painting evolves, it changes. And so you just have to go with whatever it is the painting needs.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and I think that's that interpretation. So you're working from a photograph most of the time? Is that, or photographs, plural, I guess? And put it
I have a stock of photographs that I take everywhere I go. I have a huge file on my computer, and then I print out what I need.
Right.
And sometimes I put a couple of photographs together as well. And I remember this one because we were traveling. I forget where we were traveling, and I remember taking the photograph, and I really enjoyed painting this one.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful painting. It's landscape. Is how big was this one about?
24 by 48.
Yeah, so it's got some size to it. It's a lovely piece, and I think it people just love to see things like that. I think
I've done quite a few 24 by 48. It seemed to be a size that works well for the movement, for the transition.
Right, and you're seeing more panoramic a little wider view of. So usually when an artist looks out there, you're seeing peripherally quite a bit, and you've got to try to narrow it down. What is the most important thing? And it's got a nice way. So you work mostly in the studio? Is that
mostly in the studio? Yeah.
Yeah. So are you a plein air painter at all? Do you do any?
I have done plein air painting. I haven't done any for the last little while. And I do like painting plein air. I just haven't, for some reason, I've moved away from it, and I'm doing a lot in the studio work.
Yeah. Yeah, I find a lot of times it's very spontaneous things with plein air. A lot of times when you have an idea what you want and you want to finish it, you need studio time to enact that idea. So this is some of that streakiness. I can see this. I'm laying on the back seat as a kid and looking up and seeing the world rushing by. I feel like this is in space, and I think it gave a sense of speed and time. But your paintings initially took me back as a kid almost immediately when I saw them, because I said, where have I seen that picture before?
Yeah.
And I remembered I saw that when I was a kid. So were you inspired really from the time of early childhood in this kind of a concept, and now you're just doing it, or how does that work?
Sometimes those things just stay with you, and for years and years before, if you're a writer or a painter, and then it manifests itself somehow. So I do remember taking photograph at a young age when the family was driving through the countryside, and you're trying to capture what's out that window. And in those days, the cameras would not be able to capture what's there. Everything was moving, and you didn't want it to move at the time. Well, now I'm taking photographs out the window, but I have learned how to use my camera to actually get the motion. I do remember those days of taking that. At one point, looking at those moving pictures and thinking, well, I wanted a still, but I looked at it and I thought, well, wait a second, there's something happening here that's really interesting, that's different. Yeah. And that's when I started painting them.
Right. Yeah, those Instamatic cameras, they were kind of set on an automatic setting, and they shot at a certain speed for what was out there, and they wanted a kind of a good general image that Kodak could print their prints off without you returning them. And generally, they weren't. They were handy, but they didn't do everything. I remember shooting black and white with them. That's all film I had was black and white film as a kid shooting. I had my own little camera. Same thing though. It was little blurry images and different things, but this one really has a nice abstraction to it. I can really feel this. There's this streaking that's happening, the sky coming through the trees. Sense to it, and it's got a lovely. It's just a different feeling, and it is abstract, but it's based on realism, on the realistic feeling that you're having. So
and so the road is there. The road is there in a lot of the photographs, a lot of the paintings, because that tells you that you're standing somewhere, that you're viewing it from a place.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the road in going on the cross angle there in the foreground. The road going by. But I can. It almost feels like you got the wrong pair of glasses on. It's just. I guess you could simulate that with a different pair of glasses. But this is another lovely piece, and I love this snippets of the vehicle or reflection interpreted into the piece, yet it's not distractive. Like and I love that because the shapes are very unique. They're different than the tree scene in the background, or the sky, or the things that you're looking at. So there is a nice balance between internal and external on the work. So can you explain a little bit what's, I guess, happening in this piece here? Again, similar, I would think, a bit, but.
Yeah, it's similar. This piece changed as it went along. I got to a point where I thought it was finished, and I looked at it and I thought, there are parts of it that aren't working for me. So I had to go back into it actually quite a bit later. I let the painting sit for months, I think, before I went back to it. And I thought, well, what is it in the transition paintings that I love? And so there were things in this painting that I went in and I, because the painting speaks to me, right? So it says, this is what I need. And I love the reflections as well, because I don't remember where this one was from, but I do remember painting it. And I also really like those little snippets that say there's something that's moving there, but it's at the same time, it's still, it's a moment in time that you're never going to have again. And it's in our memory, but where is it in our memory? You know,
it feels very film noir like this one. It has that. This is kind of what even in the sci-fi business, in film they try to show transitioning between this world and that world. The motion of we got a physical vehicle built into this shape, yet it's not distracting. This is what and the more you look at it, the more you see. And I think that's what a painting should do. That gives a painting life on a person's wall. Why do I want to go look at that painting again and again and again? And each time you go back, you start understanding what you see as an artist.
Yeah.
And I think we as artists are also reflecting what the buyer or the viewer want to see in themselves in there. So I can see an artist, like I can see the person that really likes a piece is saying, yeah, I can understand that. I was in maybe a similar situation in my life that this one evokes in me, right? So it's kind of it feels very richly painted. And what I like about your work is it looks like a series. I mean, there's a story being told through this, what we're going to look at today. People are basically going to watch a story that's being told, that there's no beginning and end to it, but it's a story chunk a piece of, because you're still painting, right? You're still painting lots of different things.
Yeah, I've had a lot of comments from people who have said the same thing as you, that it reminds them of the childhood of, lying down, looking up at the sky and the trees, or moving in a vehicle. And there's that snippet. So it does take people back in memory, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think people try to understand your point of view, and they understand that it makes sense that they can be there as well, right? In that same point of view. And it's great that you're able to convey that, because I've seen situations where people try to merge a number of images together and it looks clunky. It feels awkward, doesn't work, and you don't know why. And it's probably just haven't worked with it enough, or they don't have a clear enough idea of the focus of where they want to go with that idea. And again, a lovely color palette, and it's still rich. This one's, very abstracted, this piece. You can believe whether it's reflection in water or it's just and it could be foliage, it could be a lot of things. And I love that about the piece as well. So it almost feels like an inset, like a piece, or maybe a blow up section of this one does, but it still has a nice transference feel. I think it's got it's a beautiful.
At the bottom of the painting, you've got more of a horizontal line, and then as it moves up, it becomes more angular. And I wanted to put in the trees in there so that people will be able to identify that it is a landscape. but everything else is moving.
Yeah, I think that horizontal structure in the foreground also set up the skewness of what's going on, right? So if everything was horizontal, it might be a little bit more boring, but this one really sets the mood that I'm horizontally here, and that landscape I'm looking at and being a part of is kind of just twisted just a little bit. And I think it's nice to know that it was pre-planned. And I know we go through accidents when we all paint a little bit, but knowing what is a good accident and following it through, I think that. So is there a process you mentioned a little bit of Photoshop and your bit of your underpainting style that you might work it up? But I think, how would you advise other people to look at their landscape if they were to look at? I mean, they already maybe have a style. How would to keep it fresh? Like your work has a freshness to it.
Well, I do teach acrylic painting, and so we talk about how to keep the painting loose and keep it fresh. And I focus on the shapes, the colors, and the textures, and I don't think so much about the fact that I'm painting trees or a landscape. I suggest to my students, even, you take the photograph and you sketch out the important things that you want to put into your painting, the composition, and then take the photograph and put it away and paint intuitively and don't look at that photograph again. Yeah. That's really difficult to do when you're starting out. Sometimes it's difficult to do later on too, because you keep wanting to go back to this reference, right?
Yeah, and I've done a similar thing to that as well. And I encourage people to write about what they see and turn the picture upside down and only respond to what they have written about it. What it does is it creates focus, and you only put in then what is in your mind, only puts in what you remembers and puts in. If you have a photo, you want to put everything that's in the photo in the painting. So your mind will edit automatically what's important, what's not important. And you're right, it's sort of like wanting to peek to the last chapter and read the ending of the book.
That's right.
And you got to slap their hand a little bit and say no. Do you encourage them to use black and white photocopies and stuff, or color okay?
I encourage them to actually take a look at their painting. Usually they take a photograph of it in their phone, and in the phone you can take it to black and white and have a look at it there, to look at the values and the composition and so on. Right. I haven't had them actually start in black and white. I've talked to them about it, because a lot of the masters used to start off with a grisaille, where they just was black and white and gray, and then they had all their values, and then they'd put the color in. But I do encourage them to look at it in black and white. Yeah. The other thing I discovered that the masters did is they also, because they didn't have electricity, they painted with a candlelight or natural light. So if you take your painting and look at it in candlelight, you'll get a different perspective of it, a different view, and you'll be able to pick up more of the of how the painting is working or not.
Sort of like painting your painting with sunglasses on. And then you take your sunglasses off and you realize how much brighter everything is, because you were painting through a lens that might be a red correction for color in what you're doing, especially if you're working with greens and wearing a sunglass that has a red filter in it. It'll sharpen. And I've actually had to paint like that on plein air when the sun is so bright. You're squinting. It's really hard there. It's hard on your eyes. So sometimes you just wave the wand and say, yeah, just got to do it. And you take it off and it turns out usually pretty good. It's just the color values have shifted a little bit because of the glasses. Yeah. Oh, I'm going too fast. I got a very sensitive mouse. Okay, there we go. These ones I really starting to get, I love these little 3-4 little pieces that are snippets that are really sitting up there. It's got a nice, I don't know. Again, we're back inside a vehicle and you don't know it. You don't know it. But yet you can pick a rooftop out on one. Yeah. You get a tree in another, I guess. Yeah. And so those become into very nice little indicator symbols as to, so you're not shocking a person as to where am I? All you're giving them is a discovery. Go to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many people. Yeah.
A bit of a clue, of maybe where you are and so on. Again, the foreground is more horizontal, and then it gets more skewed as you go up apart in the painting.
Right. You notice that a lot of people said that you go to a gallery, and if a person spends 30 seconds in front of your painting at any one time in the gallery, you're doing well, because a lot of times they're doing the walkthrough in 5 minutes to look at the show, or if there's too many people in the show at an opening. But I think your works probably keep somebody engrossed for a longer period of time. If they like a piece, now they're into discovery as to what you're thinking about and where am I and what is it about. So I guess artists have to consider that as well when they're doing their work. How long is somebody going to be looking at my work? Especially if it's in a gallery situation, you spend how much time working on it. You'd love the person to spend a few minutes at least responding to your piece of work, right? Yeah. I think maybe some of yours give people that that sense of they should spend more time, because they start understanding. You've scrambled the pieces up on them a little bit, and then you present it to them, and they see rooftop, they see tree. Okay, I'm in a car. I can see the stuff going by. Do titles make a lot of sense to you? Like, are they important to your work? A title?
Titles are a difficult one for artists, I think, and I get challenged by that as well. With the transition pieces, I have had a series. For example, I've had traces 1, traces 2, traces 3. So sometimes there's a series of work that are on this more of the same theme. And the titles are important. I think they're important for people because that's one of the things they look at. They look at the title.
Right.
And it's not always, it's a bit of a challenge sometimes.
So is the artist statement also a challenge for, it's like a show or a presentation for?
Yeah, it is.
The darned artist statement about the show. Yeah, we all have to do those. Do you apply for grants and shows and public shows at all, or are you commercially, do you sell?
I have done that. I'm at the stage now where all I really want to do is paint. So that applying for the grants and the shows isn't as important to me anymore. I want to spend the time in the studio. I want to spend the time painting and doing what I love, what I want to do.
Right. Well, we're going to try and help you.
I have done that in the past.
We're going to try and help you with some of that. We'll with Artists in Canada, we're starting our art show sales. So very soon, Tatianna's show will be up, and let's just take in some of these. Again, this is similar to you had before, and I'm breaking them up so that they're not these square abstracted pieces one after the other, but that it's important to really get this one really has a movement feeling to it, more so than you're in a vehicle or those things. This is like looking right out the window, and I feel I sense a lot of things going by, but I also, my mind now fills in information that I've seen previously.
Okay.
So I kind of believe that you can, it's sort of like the old days of TV commercial. They give you a 2-minute commercial, and then pretty soon they're going to give you 30-seconder. And you, in your mind, remember what was in the 2-minute commercial, and you fill it in 30 seconds. And that's kind of how I see this. So if they've seen your other images, now they're looking for the car. Now they already know that they're in the car looking out the window. This is a different experience. This is my interpretation of it. And I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I think your mind, as a teacher, you know that your mind carries images from previous things that you've worked on. So does your work depend on previous works that were worked on? Let's say like in a series?
Sometimes I know that when I've done a painting and there's a a part of a painting that I feel is very successful, then sometimes I will use that part of the image in another painting, something similar.
So they kind of talk to each other. So is there a kind of a conversation in the pieces of work?
Yeah, I think there's a conversation. This one is more abstracted, but you're right. The memory of what you've seen in the past goes through with this one. And I think that's one of the things about the paintings too, is because these transition pieces are places where we've all been, and they are in our memory, but we don't always remember everything that's in our memory.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes things will trigger that.
Exactly. Yeah. It pulls out. What I like about the work, it's universal. This could be anywhere. This doesn't have to be Canada. It could be in Europe, or it could be in England. It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And that is a nice piece about people can understand that they've had similar situations around the world. So it's just another one. Just
this is a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. It looks larger, but I really like these gestural. These slices of light that's spitting out like rain, like they're rain shedding off of a car as you're driving by. Have you painted in rain before, like rainy types of imagery? Or
I've worked on painting rain. It can be complicated to
yeah, it is.
Raindrops.
Yeah.
But these are bits of light. It could be rain, I guess. I haven't done much with rain.
Yeah, no, these are definitely shards of light that are reflecting and coming through the trees. And yeah, the structure on the left side, I'm trying to orientate. Is that inside the vehicle again?
Yes, yeah. So again, you have a road there at the bottom of the painting, and that orientates you that you are on the ground somewhere, and this is all moving past you.
Right. And you know what? And it's a funny thing as a painter looking, I love that little bit of light that's shining on the road.
Yeah.
Don't make it all dark. You need to help people a little bit and give a bit of life to that. It also gives it kind of tips the road also down a little bit, so it's a little flatter. And so those little things, I think, understanding that when you're painting and adding them as you're working on the compositions. These are really design compositions, so I really like. They feel loose, but they have a focus and a structure to them, and no, this is just a lovely piece.
This one's called Digital Telepathy because I took it was from a photograph again of windows in a building from the outside, but it made me think of the fact that we are in a very fast moving world where everything's moving very quickly, and so all these little bits of light could be bits of information being transferred. Digital telepathy is what I called it. Yeah. And I really enjoyed painting this one too, and it was reflections in a window.
Have you worked with reverse typography in some sense at all on windows of cafes or different things? Or?
I've done a little bit, not a lot.
Yeah, you can't do everything, but I'm just saying there's so many ways of saying city and reflection. This one does have that in a simple way. The busyness of our life, it still has that, and just that little light at the very bottom of the page reflecting, rather than everything being light at the top of the page.
Yeah,
different ways of looking at things, and I think as individuals, it's sort of how we interpret our own world, like that we live in.
Yeah, it's how we make sense of our world too.
We try to, I think. We try to make sense of our world, and hopefully that's what artists do. We present different ways of looking at things and ideas, and I think that registers with people that a commonality, and if it's sincere by the artist, in other words, paint for yourself first, and that's how you agree that's you encourage your students as well.
Yes.
For yourself. Yeah.
Students come to the class, and I know they've talked about what other people have to say about their paintings, people at home or friends or whatever, but you have to paint for yourself. That's right.
Yeah. Do you keep a sketchbook at all? A scrapbook of things that you do?
Scrapbooks and sketchbooks I do, and journals.
Yeah. It shows that you do, because I think that's the only way you can have this amount of ideas generated on a regular basis. Do you ever have the days where your mind is blank and you don't know what to do, the blank screen or the blank canvas?
Not very many, actually.
Yeah. Well, that, you always go back to your resources, right? Is that what you do? Yeah. And some days I found some days are painting days, some days are exploration days.
Yes. And so even going into the studio, if I'm not inspired to paint that day or distracted maybe by something else, I can still go into the studio and I'll move things around. I'll take a look at photographs that I have that I want to paint. I'll put wire on the back of the paintings. I'll do something that keeps me in the studio, because as long as I'm engaged in that space, then the ideas start to come.
Right. It's a good advice for most artists that might have that blank in their life. What do I do next? Idea, right? And I think you're right, scrapbook, sketchbook, things you like to read, inspirational pieces around you that inspire you to produce work that you want to produce.
Mm-hmm.
That because you tend to gravitate to things you like and mediums you like. Not everybody's a painter. Maybe collage is something, whatever you want to do. Your work does have a feeling of collage to it as well. So I just
nice, I can see that.
Yeah. This is a lovely. And for me, this one feels like I'm driving around one of the lakes, and I'm looking through the car window. So it has a very, you can see through the trees a little bit as to what's going on. Yeah, it's got a. So where was this piece produced?
Yeah, British Columbia, driving through the probably the Kootenays.
Yeah.
So
I can feel that. Like and I remember as a kid driving around the lakes in BC in that nighttime, and just before really dark, and you could see the lights of towns as you went through Kelowna and through the Okanagan, and this feels very much like that. Even without it saying, I'm just saying it has a nice BC feel about it. Just without knowing that.
I love trees. We lived in BC for a little while, and I love trees, and I've painted a lot of trees in many different ways, and this was just a different way to see the landscape, which is what you said.
Right. But it's still in your style, right? This is what I like about it. You have a very distinctive style, and it changes a little bit relative to subject matter, but basically you have a way of working. So it's a good, solid way of doing things. I love this piece. This is.
So this is an interesting piece because I started painting it for an exhibition in Salmon Arm when I lived in BC, and it's from a photograph that I took inside a train when I was in Europe, actually. And so the figure that you see the hand and the figure, that's a mirror image of my husband sitting there in the train. And so he's an engineer, and he said, well, why don't I put some lights in there? So you see those little dots of lights that go from about the middle left up to top right. Those are LED lights that actually turn on.
Okay. Yeah.
And so those are connected to a little Arduino computer in the back of the painting, and you plug it in, and those lights. Lights go on.
The lights spark up. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the little dots are the lights.
Are the lights
that run along there, and it's a unique piece of abstraction. I mean, knowing now that it actually lights up, it's kind of different in a different way, in thought. But it feels very Europe to me, and I think maybe it's because I've watched a lot of movies that there are trains in them and people are doing things. I haven't traveled on an awful lot of trains myself, but it's but I get it. Like immediately, I get it. I know that I'm on a train, or in some sense of seeing a train go by, and it's got a, but it feels very industrial as well, and feels very, very city-like, like it's got an urban feel about it. And again, motion, time going by, and we need to make the best of it, I guess, is what we're saying. But this is just really nice transportation feel too.
Yeah. So when you think of the fact, people are traveling from one destination to another, and there are all those spaces in between. We're always looking at, where are we going to next? Well, the journey itself is, all these little bits of memories throughout the journey that sometimes we take a picture while we're going through it, but we don't think about it much. We always talk about where we're going to be. And so this little snippet is inside the train with reflections from the outside and the inside as well.
Yeah, I think people used to really enjoy the journey. Now it's just get me there.
Yeah.
I close my eyes, I put a mask on, I hide in a corner on an airplane, and just get me there. And when they get out, then I'll be free, right? Where in the old days, everything was fine. Then you get food delivered to you. They actually served you on the airplane, and you had
there was
food.
that. Yeah.
You still lost your luggage, but it's still, it'll get there. But it's changed. Travel has changed for people a lot, and it's just the frustration that happens. So you're right. Get me there quickly between two spots, but this is a nice snippet that's in between. It shows that transference between the two.
There's a lot of stuff that happens in between. You're right. This one's in between too, because you're going from one place to another again. Right,
and you get that feeling. The color is changing from one side to the other. So that, but also the perspective, and it's really hard to tell people, how do you put perspective into a landscape if you don't have telephone poles and a diminishing road? And you're really saying it turns really flat pattern otherwise. And you say, how do I give a feeling of depth and perception, other than you got color value and hue that you have to deal with to do a lot of that, but you need some directional devices as well. And you've got that on the corner, that angular thing, and it's pointing devices. And things that just run off the page, because they didn't come to a point. The one, the window and the horizon line there on the edge of the bushes, they don't meet to a point. You've left some room for the audience to finish that line. They all give. It still gives a really nice feeling of motion. I love the blue sky pulled right in behind the trees. It gives an area. It's not a heavy painting, yet it's heavily painted. It has you need the lightness from the sky, and I think it works nicely. There's a nice balance between what's important and what is a support, and the blue is a support for the green, and that what's happening there. I'm picking your paintings apart, but it's sort of my way of understanding what's happening.
It's really nice to hear what people have to say about them, because a lot of people see things very differently.
They do. We don't have fish jumping out of water and things. Is this a reflection in the foreground on the water, or what would you say?
I think it is. Yes, I don't remember exactly now, but when I look at it, that's what it feels like to me. Yes.
It doesn't matter, but it just kind of there's nice continuity, and the brush strokes are different from bottom to top, so there's not it's relative to what you're painting. Water is different than trees, for instance. No, it's beautiful. Now this one is a bit more definitive of what things are. You actually got a car painted, physical car.
So this one is similar to the one we saw a couple of scenes before. This one also has LED lights in it.
Okay.
So
similar to the one with the train.
That's right. So you have there are actually lights in the back of the car where you see that there should be lights. There are real lights there.
Okay.
And they are again connected to an Arduino computer in the back of the painting, and you plug it in, and there are different lights that go on they're in different places, including the back of the car. And this one too, I remember standing at a bus stop, and it was also in Europe. And I took a photograph of this. And so I went into Photoshop and I tweaked it a bit to get it to move, to get that motion.
Right.
But I like the composition and I like the urban feel to it, and the buildings, and then the juxtaposition of the trees in front of it. So there are still trees in there, but you're in the middle of the city.
They're a bold tree. They're not just a tree. They've got a.
Yeah.
But I like the breakup of how the buildings are showing through the trees, which still give you a feeling of trees, but they're incorporated into the landscape.
Yeah.
And it's really about the architecture of the city, with a little bit of trees to soften that urban feel of a city, right?
Yeah. We can use a little bit more softness in the urbanness of the city, in my mind.
We're becoming quite concrete, actually. There's a lot of asphalt and concrete, and not going to get any better soon, I would think.
Yeah.
So I found a lot of our, they have a little spot dug out of the sidewalk and they stick a tree in there, and the poor tree's trying to make a living.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of times, a lot of our trees have suffered. They just didn't get enough water in the drought.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you've got a dead tree sitting. Pretty soon all they do is they pull it out and they put little bricks in there and it's done, or a chair.
That's right.
Or a
Yeah.
bench.
That's right. Yeah.
And pretty soon all the greenery is missing from the downtown area. And I think psychologically, we need that. We need the green part to our life, just as people. Otherwise, your urban concrete, the heat, everything else, the impact of the city itself, it's hard on people. Yeah. But this is, I like this piece, and it's illustrated. I didn't realize that about the lights, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm just trying to, I'd love to see this piece in real life and see how that works. And so is this a canvas, and is there a hole in the canvas?
Yeah. So the lights have come through the front of the canvas, because the lights are in the front, and they're just little wires that come from each little LED light, and then it's connected with a wire behind the canvas.
Yeah. So the lights there, the traffic light, I'm seeing the traffic light would be
traffic light,
and the backs of the cars, and that just
they're
little snippets of color, and they different kind of, it creates different type of focus for a person that comes in and sees it. There's a wonderment about why is that part so bright, and you go in and you look, and you see a little spark, and then you start understanding what it is. It's not a bad device. It's just, I think you have to be careful where they place them and how it works. But good that you got an engineer that helped you with that. So.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. This is a lovely piece as well. This one, I put this one on. We have one similar in the beginning of our show.
Yes.
And this one looks like it was part of that
same
kind of series. Yeah. I love this scallop window, that little scallop white. It's kind of why is that there? These little floating abstract pieces, I love them. They make sense. And it's like, if I did them, it'd be like, why is that there? And I think you've got a really good mix of abstraction with reality, because I think I sense your paintings internally more than just saying, oh, it's trees and a car. And I'm sort of understanding that it's me. Like, I can belong here. I've seen this before.
Yeah.
We talked about
I actually started off with abstraction many, many years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So how long have you been painting this style of work?
This style, 10 to 15 years, I think.
So it takes a while to develop. I mean, this doesn't just happen overnight. And it's kind of I imagine in the beginning, maybe a little frustrating process to start with. And then finally you find a rhythm and you understand how the motifs work, right? Is that?
And I've done other types of paintings in between. Sometimes I'll move away from the transitions for a while. I've done still life, and I've done more traditional landscape. So I do those in between as well.
Yeah.
But and then I go back to these.
Right. But I can see lots of different ways, like this, reflection of glass, and it could be, floral. You could have still life, and it would still have a feeling that it's still you. You could change your subject matter. That's what happens with a lot of artists is they can't take their style and do different things with it, and people know that it's them. So if you have, I guess I'll call it a technical style that you like, and it's a mixing of the abstraction with forests or trees, that could be transferred into, different things, I guess, different ways of looking. Yeah. No, it allows you a lot more latitude in your subject matter if that's what you're looking for. Well, that's very interesting. Let everybody know that we are going to have a show of Tatianna's work here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll let people know as best we can, and we'll welcome David back. I think we're there. We go. Yeah. What do you think, David? No, we need some volume.
So I turned my mic off. It's funny you said before we started the show, before Tatianna came on, it would be like this movement thing, and certainly the very last one that we saw, it was. I agree. It was like laying down in a car and just watching it go past, and it sounds so simple, but it's just this wonderful movement to it.
Yeah. Oh,
anyway,
good.
I'm gonna ask the business end of it. Stephen normally does. If people, well, there you go. It's you artists want to sell art. If I wanted to purchase a piece from you, what sort of price ranges would they be in?
Well, the smaller ones would probably be around $700, and then the largest ones are closer to $1,900.
Okay, that's Canadian dollars again, yeah.
Canadian dollars.
Canadian dollars, just a great deal all around. Yeah.
Well, that was remarkable. I just didn't know what to expect. Every now and again, I was sort of busy doing other stuff, and it's awful to say that, but I'm just sort of trying to keep the wheels rolling. I hear something and look up, and I go, oh wow, So lots of wow moments today. So I hope when people watch the show again, when it's released, they'll agree. Lots of wow moments. Thank you so much for showing us your art today.
You're very welcome. Glad I could do this. I'm glad you had me on here, and it was good to talk about it.
Yeah, and we'll continue with the promotion here in the next day or so, and we'll have you on Artists in Canada, and we'll see if we can get you a little bit more exposure. I think that's people about what your work is all about. We just love. But anyway, Tatianna, I really love the work, and don't want to take any more of your time from your studio.
Oh, thank you very much.
Get back to work. Get more work done. And thanks, David, for hosting again.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your show, because I just see stuff I'm never ever going to see anywhere else, and I'm thrilled by that. So thank you, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, I think.
Hang on, Tatianna, for a second, and we'll back to you.
Okay.
Okay. We'll run the credits. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.